We are going to look at a code walkthrough of some of the key elements. Now, to create this project, we used the Ganapati Ganesha sprites as the base project, and we have remixed it. Because we have remixed it, you will see it shows up as part of remixes. And the best thing about Scratch collaborative platform is that when you use somebody's project to remix, it automatically shows up a credit here. So it does thank, and this is very important for us to kind of follow this. And even when you're using sprites from somewhere else, remember to add it to notes and credits. Now, the first thing, and many a times children want to do this, whenever you want to show different characters and you want the player to select one of the character, and that becomes, that character is used throughout the game. There are two key ways to do it. One is to duplicate, have four, if you're showing four characters, four different sprites. Now the problem in that is that even if you just finish one sprite and duplicate it and make your changes, maintaining it becomes very difficult, because as you start to make changes and improve on your project, you cannot keep all your characters synchronized. So a better way to do is using the cloning concept. Now why do you need to use clone? When you want to show multiple times the same sprite on the screen, you can see our Ganapati has 3 costumes, and you can just pretty much add as many as you want. Even if you add 10, your code really doesn't change. The only thing you have to do is work on the placement. Rest, everything is done using the same code. So here what we're doing is, so on the broadcast, when I receive select Ganapati Murti, this is the first broadcast which is being sent from the backdrop code. Select Ganapati Murti. Now when this broadcast is received, we are setting the size of the Ganapati we want to show here, and we are setting Ganapati selected to -1. So this is a global variable. A global variable means a variable which is created for all sprites. If you want a variable to be accessed by individual clones, you have to treat it as a global variable. Always remember that. And then we are using something to keep the number of clone count. And then what we are doing is we are creating the 3 clones. We are doing some basic housekeeping, that what is the initial costume, and then we are hiding the original one first. We are just showing 3 clones. We are setting the original position. Because we are creating 3, we are using a loop of repeat 3. So in this repeat of 3, we are creating a clone, giving a little weight, keeping the clone count, and showing the next costume. So basically each of your clone has a different costume. It is picking up the next costume from here. Now we will look at what is this code in a little bit. But now what happens when the clone has started? This can be a little bit tricky if you are not familiar with cloning in Scratch. So what I would recommend, the self-paced 30 Scratch challenges, they cover all the concepts in a very, very fun and interesting way. So I would ask you to go through this challenge 5, clone your way to a colorful stream of stars. It will give you a great head start on using cloning, and you will see a lot of other projects also use cloning. For instance, game for a cooling drink, then even this create and code a tennis ball machine. So if these 3 projects, if you kind of do them and practice, you'll start to get more and more comfortable with cloning. When I start as a clone, we want Ganesh G's to be placed in a certain order that they're visible clearly. Now there are multiple motion blocks you can use for it. Go to XY, you can use in this, the Y will remain same and you just change the X position. But because you only change the X position, might as well as use either of these blocks, either set X or change X. What is the difference between using change X and set X? So basically in change X, you're just moving it by 150 on the right. The first one 150 on the right, the second one 2 times 150 on the right. So that is why we are multiplying by the clone count. So if you add 5, they will keep moving. Of course, you will have to reduce 150 and make them smaller so that more fit. If you want in 2 rows, then you will have to change even the Y position. And we have some tutorials to specifically show you that placement also. So you can either use change X or you use set X. So if you set X, then basically you have to take the current X position and then add the same shift. Now this is what your clone will do. So in the first part you are creating the clone, and when I start as a clone you are doing the setting. Now you are wondering what is the rest of the code for. Now the rest of the code is because once you click on the Ganapatis, right, you want that Ganapati to be only visible and rest of them to be hidden. So how do we do that? How to do that? We are making use of a variable. So as we said, Ganapati selected, we have created a global variable and we have assigned it initially to -1. Now that means Ganapati is not selected. And when you click on this sprite, and the reason we have if Ganapati selected equal to -1 because we only want to do it once. When we'll have Ganapati on every part of this project. So we don't want this to keep happening every time the player touches on Ganapati. It should happen only till the Ganapati is not selected. That is why we have to have this if condition. So if Ganapati selected is -1, then when the sprite is clicked, we set Ganapati selected to the costume number. The reason we are using that because we have our costume numbers here. And now 1, 2 or 3 depending upon what you select, this value will get assigned to the variable Ganapati selected. Now the selection has happened. Now what should happen? Once the selection has happened, we want these clones to go. Because now we don't need clones, we just want one single sprite to be displayed. So let's look at very simple code, but it's going to be very useful for you all. Once I start as a clone, I'm just going to wait until Ganapati selected becomes greater than 0. And what happens when it becomes greater than 0? We just delete ourselves. That means our work is done. Now we don't need the clones. Ganapati is selected. But if we delete all the clones, how will we see anything on the screen? Because we have already hidden the main Ganapati sprite. That means in this main code, we are also doing wait until. Now here, wait until Ganapati selected is greater than 0. So the clones delete themselves, but the main code flow, it switches costume to Ganapati selected, sets the position to the center 0, 0 or wherever you want it. You show this. You're showing the main sprite now and you give a message and you broadcast the next thing which you want to happen, which is select Murti size. If you're finding this a little bit tricky, just go through this piece of tutorial multiple times and try it. And it's okay if things don't work in the first go. It's even better because you learn as you make mistakes and you see why things aren't working. And then eventually once this works, you can use it in as many projects as you want. Children do struggle with this kind of coding a little bit. So try to understand that, okay, what you're trying to do. One of the best things is writing down steps on a paper using paper pen, right? Paper pencil. Just write down that, first what you're doing. You're showing 3 clones. When you're starting as a clone, you're setting the position, right? So now we are summarizing this for you. Now what happens, you now need to write what will happen when you click for selection. So the next code is when the sprite clicked. So when the sprite clicked, you basically want to set this variable Ganapati selected to the right costume number. So the selection is done. Now once the selection is done, what do you want to happen? You want the clones to hide themselves because now you just want one main sprite. In the start as clone, we have told each of the clones, you show yourself and you just wait for selection to happen. So they all are waiting. How do they know the selection has happened? By waiting until Ganapati selected is greater than 0. And once they know that selection has happened, they quietly delete themselves and go. Now, in the meanwhile, you want the selected Ganpati costume to actually show, and you want to show in the center. So what we do, if we select, right, I had to rerun the code as we had unplugged all of this. So now in this case, when we click on this, what has happened is wait until Ganpati is selected is greater than 0. So the moment this condition got met, that means Ganpati selected variable value got set to 1, 2, 3, whatever number of costumes you have, whichever is the selected one. You switch costume to that costume, you set the position, and there you go. You are ready with your costume selection. Now let's quickly move ahead and see how is our size being selected. So here we are again using another Sprite which has 3 costumes, small, medium and large. Now this is a piece of this is a Sprite which you're only using once, and it's not really, it doesn't even have to, it is not going to stay on the screen after the selection is made. So you could have even done 3 simple duplicates of this, and that's one way to do it. But since you have learned cloning, it's good to keep practicing in even simple ways. So here what you're doing, when I receive select Murti's size, you're doing the same code, you are repeating 3 times, showing these 3 costumes. And when I start as a clone, again the same thing, you're just setting the position. So here we have used go to X, but as you saw, you can just use the set X or change X because the Y is not changing here. And now what do you want to do when the sprite is clicked? So you are setting another variable, another global variable, that is a variable for all sprites, which is called Murti size, because this is going to be used throughout your project for all your different characters to set to the right size based on the selection. So you set the variable and you broadcast set size, or you can say set size done, which is more clear that okay, the size part is done. And when you are done with setting the size, you just delete this clone because you don't need it anymore in the project. So if I set medium, this part has done. Ganpati ji has been selected, size has been selected, and we can move to the next thing where we allow the user to change the theme. This is a very simple code. Does it require explanation? Maybe, maybe not, depending upon how comfortable you are. So on this button change theme, very simple thing. All we have done is when this sprite is clicked, the change theme sprite, you broadcast a message called change theme. Other than this, the other code is the only thing to show, when should it show, where should it show, when should it hide, right? So this is when the sprite will broadcast change theme. Now who is going to be changing theme? It is our backdrop. So our backdrop receives this message when I receive change theme, and all it is doing, it is just picking up a random value and setting the color effect. So with this, we have we are ready with our initials. We've got our Murti selected, the size selected, the theme ready, and we are ready to move to the next set. So continue watching the next part of the tutorials if you want to see how we are helping the player and yet be able to control what we really want the player to do.